I'm John Tayer, President and CEO of the Boulder Chamber, and today we'll be talking with Mike Giansanti, who is the Deputy CIO, Chief Information Officer. Innovation. See, I'm already screwing up. It's that technology thing. With the City of Boulder, and we're going to be talking about the city's broadband investment strategy and how it's designed to help improve internet service for our businesses and residents. And I will tell you that this is part of a two-part series. We're going to be talking with Mike about his work with the City of Boulder, and then we're going to have a second conversation with some private sector providers of internet service and broadband connectivity in our community. So with that, I'm just going to kick it off and welcome you, Mike, to Chamber Chat.
Thanks, John. It's great to be here.
There you go. Thank you for being here. So I'm just going to ask real quick, get a sense of this broadband investment strategy. I know you gave an update to City Council, so maybe if you can just tell us, what are the goals of this strategy and what is the status?
Yeah, thanks, John, and thanks for having me on again today. I would say that broadband as an initiative for the city is not new, right? Having affordable, fast, reliable internet to everybody here in the City of Boulder is a goal that dates back over a decade. City Council in 2018 made the first major step towards putting some significant city resources behind improving the goals of community broadband, and that was by spending $20 million, investing $20 million in creating what we call a fiber backbone. And this backbone runs along the main transportation corridors of the city. And the backbone itself doesn't serve individual premises, homes or businesses, but it acts as what we like to use a transportation analogy, right? So the backbone acts as your superhighway, right? Your big 6-lane superhighway that can carry data. What it doesn't have is off-ramps and main streets and side streets to bring it to people's homes and businesses. And so now what is before City Council is how do we actually connect this investment that the city has made in our backbone? How do we connect that to premises to help serve residents and businesses in the community?
That's interesting. And so then a question I have, just in terms of the actual infrastructure. So it runs throughout the city on major thoroughfares. Can you give me a sense of the dimensions?
Yeah, great question. It does span the entire city, and it was specifically designed so that we could serve the entire City of Boulder, all residents and businesses in the City of Boulder. It's about 65 miles total, and what it physically looks like in the ground is there are 2 pipes that sit in the ground that are about this big in diameter, and within one of those pipes we have 432 strands of glass fiber, and that glass fiber is what carries data that allows for both mobile and wired connectivity. The second conduit that we call these conduits, the pipes that are in the ground, the second one that's in the ground is completely empty right now, and it was built while we were boring underground. We said we might as well add an additional conduit. The incremental cost of doing so was quite small, and it'll further future-proof this investment for the city to allow for potential future fiber access, either city-owned and operated fiber, or potentially a partner or a third party that is leasing the space off of us.
And I imagine now, given the demands for internet service, that first tranche of fiber probably carries a significant amount of data. I mean, way more than necessarily we would need at this point.
Huge. Yeah.
Fascinating. Well, I know that a lot of our private sector providers of internet service and connectivity, they're making their own investments. And so just getting a sense of, just from your perspective, what do you see as the relationship with those private sector interests? Is it a competition, collaboration? What's the perspective?
Yeah, listen, John, I want to be very, very clear. Comcast and CenturyLink and our fixed wireless providers and other internet providers here in the City of Boulder, they're incredibly essential to life in the City of Boulder, right? In 2023, as we sit here today, the only way for an individual to have accessibility to the internet is through one of these private providers. And I am extremely grateful as a resident of Boulder myself that we have these partners here in the City of Boulder. That said, for about 65% of our residents in the city today, they only have one option. when it comes to their internet service. About a third of our city residents have two options for wired internet access. We, as the city of Boulder, our role is to make sure that our constituents are being served as well as they possibly can in today's market. And we believe that inspiring competition by either entering the market as a city municipal internet utility, similar to what our neighbors up in Longmont, Loveland, and Fort Collins have done, or try to entice some additional private competition here in the city of Boulder with additional investments in infrastructure, will hopefully create that competition to allow the market to take hold and to create some price competition and competition around services offered and customer service and reliability, and all of these factors that we've heard from our constituents are so incredibly important to them.
So just along, you mentioned municipalization,
Yep.
and so getting a sense that, first of all, my sense is that it wouldn't be exclusive. It would be that the city would have its service, and then the other private sector providers would potentially still be competing in that market. So maybe you can answer that. But then also, just a sense, I felt like City Council was suggesting that they didn't want to pursue that, but what was your read on it?
Yeah, we should have probably covered that first, right?
Yeah.
So what we presented to, and I recommend you, I know you've already read the memo and listened to City Council. I recommend all the viewers of this, if you're interested, to go and read our memo. It's on bouldercolorado.gov. You search for City Council materials. It's the August 24th council meeting. Our memo in there has all of the information that I'm speaking to. But basically, we presented council with 3 paths forward. So we've invested our $20 million in our backbone asset. We could continue to build out that infrastructure to every premise in the city of Boulder, every home, every business in the city of Boulder, and we could create a new operating department for the city, and we could actually serve as an internet service provider and compete directly in the marketplace with Comcast and CenturyLink, our two major incumbent providers. That's sort of option one. Option one carries a price tag of, we estimate, a consultant has estimated for us $268 million of capital. When we do the financing calculations on that, and we look at expected revenues and expected operating costs, it leaves us with about a $14 million annual gap between revenues and costs, including the debt service on that. And so for 25 years, while we're paying the debt service, we would actually be operating in a deficit. So it would require either the voters to approve an increased tax increment or for City Council to reprioritize on average $14 million a year of general fund revenues, which we know, living here in the city of Boulder, we have a lot of uses for our general fund revenues, and broadband isn't at the top of that list for those priorities. So that's sort of option one that we proposed, and what we said to City Council is it's really not financially viable. It appeared during that meeting that the majority of council agreed with that recommendation. Yeah, they didn't take a formal vote. We're hoping to move to vote here in the next couple of months, but that was sort of the take we got. The sort of middle option, or the second option, would be to create a formal public-private partnership where we bring some level of capital to the game. The city is somewhat of an investor, and the idea here would be that we would try to retain some of that control that would be beneficial for the city in that municipalization model. That's control over price, that's control over where we're building, that's control over a whole number of retail strategy factors, right? Now, our estimates are, just based on basic logic, we wouldn't be able to have a significant enough influence unless we were really majority shareholders, which would create a lot of the same financial issues that we see with the municipalization option. So that kind of leads us to option 3. Now, option 3 is we bring in a private party. And when I say we bring in, I mean we go out and we solicit the market, and we ask the market, hey, we have this $20 million asset, this fiber backbone, 65 miles of fiber conduit in the ground already. It's a great head start for building out a new network to premises. We would love to create a lease agreement with you to use that conduit or fiber that we already have in there in exchange for either monetary or non-monetary, be it sort of non-economic factors around retail price and retail strategy, go-to-market strategy with that potential partner. We did do a request for information process to seek market interest in doing that, and we had a number of really strongly interested parties in coming to being a new participant in the broadband market here in Boulder. And so our recommendation to council was the latter, and the idea there is that we create competition. We create more private competition. We bring in private investment into the city of Boulder to fortify our infrastructure, our broadband infrastructure here in the city. Really start future-proofing that infrastructure here in the city, and bringing our constituents, businesses, and residents additional choice when it comes to their broadband provider.
Gotcha. And a company would take advantage of having that fiber already in the ground, as opposed to maybe a Comcast or a Lumen or somebody that already has a trunk maybe already they've invested in themselves.
That's right, and I want to be very clear as well. We will welcome proposals from anybody, including Comcast and Lumen, right? To bid on potential leases of our assets, right?
Yeah.
Where we're very open-minded. One of our core tenets will be to increase competition. That is part of the goal here, is to create competition, to create that what we talked about, the price and all of those other factors that result from competition in the market.
I got it. And so, I'll just say this, just to be clear, you understand this, but also just to for our Chamber Chat audience. So, Boulder Chamber very interested in this process, and for us, it primarily starts with the goals and vision that you described, which is to make sure that we have access for our businesses and for residents to reliable internet service. It became ever more evident how important that was during the pandemic, when businesses had to go online and their workforce had to go be remotely tapping in. So paramount. And then I guess, for us, it's always been an interest in making sure that we make sure that there is a competitive opportunity for the private sector interests at play. I will say that we're a little gun shy about municipalization, maybe our history there. So I'll just ask, just as you're going forward, you think a lot about the technicalities of what you're trying to create here in the process for the investment and the competitive strategy, but ultimately for you, what is the outcome that we want to see for our community from the benefit of the investment you're making, the process that you're pursuing?
Yeah, listen, we're very, very fortunate here in Boulder, right? We have the Governor Polis's broadband office has a goal by 2027 to have 99% of the state of Colorado covered with broadband internet access. The city of Boulder is already there, so we're very, very fortunate. Our goal, as I stated off the top with these initiatives, are to make sure that we have ubiquitous, meaning everybody in the city of Boulder has access to affordable broadband internet, fiber-based broadband internet, future-proof broadband internet. And so we intend to continue to push in these endeavors and try to incite that competition with whatever levers we can pull as a municipal government to support our constituents. We just did a statistically valid community survey related to broadband, and almost 50% of our constituents said that they're unhappy with their choice and the reliability of the current options that are out there. And so we're hoping to help that, to help solve that by bringing in additional investment.
I love it, Mike. All right, well, I'll just say this, it's already been a pleasure working with you, and I just appreciate the skill that you bring to this work. It's complicated, way beyond my understanding completely, and I say that I just know that for us collectively working together, we're going to be able to drive that goal toward that goal of 100% service, but then more reliable, and also the affordable rates. And we'll do it in partnership with our private sector interests, so look forward to doing that work. So thank you, Mike, for being on Chamber Chat, and we'll look forward to working with you down the road and getting further updates.
Thank you, John. Appreciate the partnership.
Pleasure. All right, so we'll see you in just a few seconds as we change setup here, bring on our private sector partners, but thank you for joining us on Chamber Chat. Welcome to Chamber Chat. I am John Tayer, President and CEO of the Boulder Chamber, and you've already seen me talking to Mike from the City of Boulder, who's the Deputy Chief Innovation Officer, about the city's approach to investment in broadband service and high-speed internet access, and the thought that they are trying to pursue competitive service in our community. That's the goal as it's described. So what we wanted to do was have an opportunity for our private sector interest to share their perspective, not only on the services they're already providing in the City of Boulder, but also with respect to the city's approach to its investment in broadband connection. And so we have two great leaders in that industry with us. We have Andrew Heaton, who's with Tekniam, and we have Andy Davis, who's with Comcast. So they're going to talk with us about their approach to serving our community and some of their thoughts, again, on the City of Boulder's approach. So why don't I just hit it off with a question for both of you. So some of the interests that the city has expressed with respect to its goals for driving competition through its investment in broadband is this notion of addressing some of the criticisms that have been around some of the services provided now with respect to reliability, cost pressures. So I just want to get a sense, what services are you providing now in the City of Boulder, and what are your responses to some of those criticisms?
Yeah, I'll go ahead. I'll start off. Yeah, so we've been serving this community for, gosh, I think 40 to 50 years at this point, and just a tremendous amount of continued investment over that 40 to 50 years. So what I think we've stressed to the city is that Boulder is a gig speed city, and has been since 2016.
Okay.
And what that means is that anybody in this city right now in our network, the Comcast network, is ubiquitous across the City of Boulder. So if you wanted a gig connection today, you can get that in Boulder.
Sure.
And that investment has been, like I said, sustained over 40 years. And right now, the direction that we're headed is going to multi-gig symmetry. Mm-hmm. So using the network that we have, which is a fiber deep network that goes across the city, but over the network that we have today, we're going to be able to, here in the next couple of years, take those download speeds that are gig plus now, take those even higher, but also increase the upload speed. So what you'll be looking at is multi-gig symmetry over the existing network that we have today. And so what that means is a lot less disruption to the city, a lot less burden to the city itself, as we won't require additional construction, not tearing up everybody's lawn to get that service in. But that's just on and that's just on the internet side. But obviously we've been providing a broader suite of services, including multi-gig connectivity and capabilities to the businesses in Boulder. So think about not just 1 or 2 or 3 gigs, we're talking 10 and 100 gig circuits to the kinds of enterprises in Boulder that might need it. So from our view, you've got ubiquity, you've got price competitiveness, you've got high speed, you've got the privacy that the city has been looking for, commitment to net neutrality. Like a lot of the goals, in fact, all of the goals the city's been set out to do, we would say are already achieved by the kinds of investments we've made over the last several decades.
Gotcha. Well, let me ask you, Andrew, I don't know for sure that you're providing service in Boulder, but again, that response to some of the reliability and price competitiveness issues that the city has raised.
So I was brought in just kind of as a small company and another voice. We're approximately a 40-member company out of Kansas City. We're a Colorado company, but we do our manufacturing in Kansas City. We have 100% made American product. The company was founded by Tim Stranahan, who was the FBI ASAC for North Carolina at the time when he retired, and General Grange, who's a Special Forces legend, and anyway, longtime friends of mine. And we wanted to bring a wireless product that didn't have the problems of slow speed. We can go up to 9.5 gigs and do some stuff that most wireless products cannot do. And we specialize in military, law enforcement, and other first responders, and in small communities. We have a lot of projects going on in the developing world, and what we were brought in basically to bring the opinions of what new technologies could possibly aid in this.
Okay.
So that's kind of where this starts. And I'm happy to share the stage here with Comcast, which is, is actually my home service.
I think
You're not just on a panel with them, you use their technology.
Yes.
Well, let's talk then about this notion, the approach that the city's using. So the thought is that the city now has invested in its own broadband fiber network or backbone. And now they're planning on going forward with some sort of an RFP to see what other service provider options are out there. At least that seems to be the current direction. And the notion is to deliver more competition. So wondering, what is your take as business leaders in this field on the notion of competition? How does that impact your business? And about the approach that the city of Boulder's taking. Maybe Andrew, your thoughts.
Sure, we can alternate.
Yeah.
Whatever it is you go. But yeah, so I think it's kind of the stuff we expressed before in some of the prior meetings we've had. But our biggest concerns obviously are as a publicly owned utility that rarely goes well because you have customers demanding speed and immediacy, and then you have people who are working normal standard hours, 9 to 5, etc., and you end up getting a lot of rub between the two and a lot of frustration. So it appears the city is looking to pivot. The city and the county are now looking to pivot to, well, let's do a public-private partnership in some way, shape, or form. It's great to monetize the fiber ring that's already been built and do all those things. The chief concerns I see, and again, I'm not an ISP myself. I don't have a dog in this fight per se. I sell hardware, but I can tell you that the customer, like when my service goes out, I want to ring up somebody and call them right away and talk to them. And for an ISP, and I'm not mean to speak for you, but for the conversations I've had with some of the different ISPs in this area, I think a major concern with that is that you would want somehow the ISPs involved in the maintenance. Otherwise, if we're waiting for a city worker to come out and fix it, we've got a third party involved in the mix. The ISPs will be getting in trouble, and eventually the city will be the residents will be mad at the city for what's going on. Other concerns I would have are probably primarily two more. One, you will get a lot of smaller players coming into the market, which I'm a small player myself. I'm a fan of that, but I can tell you, having dealt with other smaller ISPs around the country, I have a major concern about people promising they can do things that they might not have the chops to actually commit to. I'm dealing with a situation right now in a city in northern Colorado here where a small provider that's actually here in this city and part of this process has promised several developers that we will be there, we will have service, the city's giving us money. Well, they ate up the money from the city and they haven't provided service. So you want to make sure you're partnering with people that you can actually come back and sue later, for lack of a better term, or in some way have them enforce and get out there rather than a small provider that can just cut bait and run away. If you're going to have a small provider, make sure that they have a bond, they have something in place that protects your customers and your residents. Otherwise, I see this, I deal with this all over the country. We're in 3 continents. Wow. And not as an ISP, I'm an outsider, I just sell equipment. But I see residents everywhere getting stuck because a group will say, yes, we can do that. They'll take the money, they'll do half of it, and then they leave everybody else hanging. So that's a major concern of mine also. I think there are probably other things we can do as we work toward a proposal RFP process here. Hopefully we can come up with some better ideas. I think it's great that the city wants to invest in the future of its residents. But we are actually doing much better here in Colorado than a lot of areas I go to. Yeah. And while there are problems, and there are lots of new technologies out there that we can leverage, I think we need to be smart about this, because the tendency is, it's probably my last concern is, it seems like coming to these council meetings and these other things, there's a lot of emotional, people get emotional about this stuff. It's unfair, we're being mistreated. Emotions are great in the moment when something is happening to you, but I think it's best for you to take a step back and get some proposals, look at this, and let the emotion fade away and let logic and rationality take over, and let's get to something that will actually get the most people covered the quickest and have the best long-term stability.
Yeah.
Because maintenance is a big issue here. Yeah. People don't think about that. It's like, okay, we can do these other things to shortcut things in the meantime. Well, then your long-term maintenance costs are high, which ultimately gets all passed down to the customer.
Yeah. And if you'd ask our construction and engineering folks, they would say building a network is one thing. Yeah. Maintaining it, running it, and future-proofing it, that's where the real cost is. That's where the real complexity is. But I would say, going back to your questions, I think a couple of things. One, I think at least what we saw of the city's analysis, we would say they've really underestimated the level of competition that already exists in the city of Boulder. I mean, certainly on the wireline side, yeah, you've got Comcast, you've got Lumen, but we're seeing pretty robust competition from T-Mobile, from Verizon on their 5G home offering. You've also got companies like Livewire that are providing service in the city, and for the more sort of rural parts, maybe on the other parts of the county or on the sort of the outskirts of the city, Starlink has been has started to be a more competitive player. So that's 6 competitors before you've even before the city's even gotten involved in any way. So I think anyone who responds to the RFP is going to look, I think, more broadly at what that full competitive landscape looks like, and not necessarily just the wireline. And then the other thing I would say too, when we think about competition, I think a concern that we would have is that whatever the city decides to do, and it does seem that they're leaning more on the side of maybe leasing existing fiber to, in a non-exclusive basis to other providers, is that if they were to sort of join forces with one particular company, how would they preference that company? Would they preference them in their treatment for permitting, for inspections, for just how they move through the process? I mean, I think that would be a concern for all of us, because that's a moment where the city could potentially have a vested interest in how that partner necessarily performs. And I think that's a moment where there's a regulatory advantage that doesn't necessarily make it a really competitive marketplace. It actually sort of pushes some favor that kind of distorts it. And I think what we're seeing right now, I mean, Quantum Fiber is putting a ton of investment in. We're, like I just was describing, we're doing a major new sort of upgrade to the services that we provide by getting to that multi-gig symmetry. So you've got a ton of investment that I don't think the city's necessarily paying attention to at this moment. And you really wouldn't want to have a situation where if they did join forces with one particular company, that all of a sudden, does it seem like if it's a preference situation that we think could depress investment in the market, which I think would not be to the benefit of consumers.
I would say the final comment I had, which I know you and I had discussed before, along with Guy and some of the other people from the other companies in previous meetings, is the estimate is severely underbid. It's 330 some odd million. I had my engineers take a look at it, and I mean, granted, we're outsiders. We sell different kind of equipment, but we do a lot of work with fiber and with cellular and stuff like that. And I would say the real number is probably a little north of double that. It's probably closer to 680, 700 million. Because at least in the parts of the bid that we saw, which I saw the mayor's office did a pretty good job of, and some of our engineers have submitted to it. I mean, there's not even the electronic guts of the system aren't included in that bid. It's just the in-ground prices. Yeah. And usually electronic prices are anywhere from 2/3, maybe more. And then the prices that are bid there, a lot of it are done as shallow trenching and stuff like that. Well, that's great until you have areas with deep freezes.
Or rock.
Or rock.
Which you have in Boulder.
Right. And then shallow, the other problem with shallow trenching is just long-term maintenance, especially if you're doing long runs to the last mile, or the customers that are really far out that we jokingly call, the last mile. Yeah. You're getting really far out there. You're dealing with long runs of fiber, a lot of stuff to break it up. In shallow trenching, you might get out there temporarily, but if you're dealing with frost, and it does get pretty cold here in the winter, you can have a problem with that long term. So these you need the proper investment up front needs to be determined more accurately. Gotcha. And I'd say we're a little under half of what the proper investment probably would be to do what they want to do with glass, fiber.
Well, these are great cautions, and I'd say different perspectives on some of the great research the city has been doing in this area. But obviously, it's part of the dialogue that we want to have going forward in the process. So let's turn it a little bit more going forward, future. So just you two are in this industry providing broadband access or high-speed internet access in Wi-Fi form. Just wondering, what are your visions for the future of these technologies, and then the utility? Like, what do you see as the way that we would ultimately interface with your technologies down the road?
Yeah. Well, first and foremost, I would say one of the things we're super proud of, and particularly being here in Boulder and Boulder County, is that a lot of the technology that underlies what we're doing, so our DOCSIS 4.0 protocols, the research and development that's driving that technology actually happens here in Boulder County at Cable Labs in Louisville. So totally excited about where things are headed. And I think for us, it's always, we recognize there's an education element that has to go on with this, because there's so much, it's a pretty dynamic industry, and there's a lot that's changing. So like I was saying before, multi-gig capability, multi-gig symmetry, that's the kind of products that specifically on the internet side that people will see in Boulder over the years to come. And I think people, if you look back, we've had a very steady stream of speed increases that didn't have a commensurate price increase.
Yeah.
So we still have really played out, even as you look at with inflation, we've actually had a deflationary sort of impact in the value of what we provide relative to cost.
Gotcha.
So we still think we're still priced. When you look at the city's survey, we're still priced right where residents say they would want to pay for those kinds of services. But the one other thing I do want to highlight is access for low-income households, because I think that's a really important goal of the city, and one that's been really central to what we do. So we've had our Internet Essentials program in effect we're in year 12 now, and that's our program that provides low-cost access, home internet access to income-eligible households. So right now, while that's been a successful program, it's the most comprehensive program in the country to eliminate the digital divide. But what's unique about this moment right now is we've got the Affordable Connectivity Program through the federal government, which is a $30 subsidy, again, to those similar low-income households that qualify for it. But that $30 subsidy makes that connection effectively free.
Wow.
And so I think I know that's another big goal of the cities, but we would contend that that's something that we're already solving for the city, is not just access, because we're ubiquitous across the city at this point, but we've got a variety of price points, including a low-income program to make sure that people can get connected. And again, with the Affordable Connectivity Program, that's effectively free. I know Lumen has the same thing. And so, sometimes when we look at where the city is right now, we certainly understand when you look at the survey and some interest in additional competition, but I do think there are risks to it. There are chances where that could distort the market in a sense, and especially at a moment where you've got private sector investment and companies doing what they're doing that are delivering on so many of the goals that the city set out for speed, for price, for reliability, for low-income access. We think what's happening in the market right now is more successful, I think, than the city maybe gives it credit for.
Yeah, and it sounds like what you're suggesting is that as the investment goes along, for your company at least, we'll be able to see even higher rates of speed and download.
That's continuous.
Opportunity,
Yeah.
and not necessarily even at a higher price.
Well, exactly. What we're saying is that when you look at our history, we've had continual speed increases. I mean, where we are today with 1.2 gigs speed availability, so if you're a resident right now, with a modem change, you can get 1.2 gig if you wanted it. I mean, that's, and what's wild is in 2016, the availability of a gig connection was only in 4% of homes. Fast forward to where we are today, 88% of homes across our footprint can get, and this is FCC data, can get a gig connection. And right now, for residents in Boulder, you can do that without having to dig up your lawn. You do a modem change with us. So.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, let me ask you, Andrew, the vision for your technology going forward, the kinds of services you're going to provide for the future.
Absolutely, and I think it's multifaceted. What we do obviously we don't specialize in the one-offs. That's products more like Starlink, or we specialize where you've got a cluster of 2 to maybe a couple hundred homes, and we kind of that middle segment there, so to speak, which in the U.S. only represents about, maybe it might be half the country, but it's maybe 7 to 10% of the population. But for us, a lot of our market are in foreign countries, in the developing world. Because that for them represents 70 to 95% of their market. I mean, if you look at typical countries in South America, you've got one big central city like Argentina, you got Buenos Aires, and then you got everything else around it. Is too far out. So I think for us, a lot of it's developing world, and I also see it as a partnership going forward. Partnership with fiber and with low Earth orbit satellite. Low Earth orbit satellite is revolutionizing everything. There's now OneWeb's now competing with Starlink. And then I'm on the advisory board of a company out of Germany called Rivada, and I'm actually flying out tomorrow to go to Paris, and we're working on announcing our partnership and a bunch of other stuff we're doing, and doing some photo stuff, photo ops, etc. So but I see it as a marriage of things. You know, Rivada's product, where Starlink has gone with a strategy of putting up, you know, piles of, you know, basically inexpensive satellites in the sky, you know, basically, like a term, bicycles in the sky.
Wow.
That get you where you want to go, but they're relatively low powered, but they're much better than what we have now for one-offs in the middle of nowhere. If you're in a really rural home, you know, Rivada is putting up basically semi-trucks.
Wow.
So they're going to be aloft for about 100 times the speed. Fewer satellites, but with massively more speed and backhaul for rural areas. You know, it is as much as, you know, 40 gigabits in higher, and this is just in the current iteration. And also their signals go around the world, so they're actually faster than what happens in the fiber in the ground. They've actually made an air fiber network in the sky.
Wow.
But what we see, these evolutions in rural areas, what happens generally speaking, is that the first satellite comes in, and then it's followed by technologies, a lot of times either assisted by technologies like ours or followed by technologies like ours. And then eventually it becomes fiber.
Yeah.
You know, over time, you will see there's this evolution toward fiber, because at the moment, it's the best technology we have to connect people at the fastest speeds, because all you gotta do is upgrade the router in the home. You change the lasers and the cameras out, and it gets faster. The same node that's running across the Atlantic Ocean that was doing 10 kilobits, you know, in the 80s, now does, you know, I forget what that was, 120 terabits now, or 80 terabits.
Wow.
It's something insane. 80 it's some insane number now.
Wow.
That they run through these undersea cables. A lot of them, the original strands, they just, you know,
my gosh.
have more.
Figured how to use them more
Figured how to use
efficiently.
it way more efficiently.
That's what cable
And
access, yeah.
so that this is the evolution of technology. I remember, you know, I was born in Miami. My parents moved to Buena Vista when I was a little kid. See, I say it properly.
Yeah.
Colorado, yeah, all Coloradans will get that joke.
Yeah.
Like, what is wrong with those people? Why don't they, you know, it's like, it's all the towns in our valley. You know, it's not Salida, it's Salida. But anyway, you know, I remember being a kid, you know, dial up and, you know, you want to get that 28.8 connection, it's 10.8.
Oh, yeah.
You know,
Right.
the little wiener,
Yeah,
as
yeah.
it makes all the noises. And to see how far we've come.
Fascinating.
You know, that even with a Starlink, which granted it goes up and down, it's not perfect, but even with a Starlink, you're still getting 100 megs a lot of times.
Yeah.
But that you can get a gig to your home, and that's enough to watch 100 Netflix simultaneously.
Wow.
I mean, the place that we've come to.
Just put it in perspective.
Yeah, we've really come far, and the market is catching up quick. You know, I think there's room for a public-private partnership here, but I don't think the right avenue has quite been found yet.
Yeah.
Would be my synopsis based on what I've seen. I think we're getting in the neighborhood of it, but I think it's going to take a little more effort. And I would advise everybody, take a step back, take the emotion out. It's nice to go stick it to the man, you know, whatever. You know, it's take a step back, look at this logically, hear all the proposals, and figure out as a group what's going to get us the best results fastest for the lowest amount of money.
Yeah.
That's ultimately the question.
I love it. Yeah, thank you, Andrew. I mean, just to be clear, I mean, our goal, Boulder Chamber, representing our businesses and the residents of Boulder in parallel, because they are our workforce, making sure that they have ubiquitous access to high-speed internet service at affordable rates. And understanding competition does play a role in that. And so appreciate where the city is working in that area. And I
Makes us all sharper.
Exactly.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and I also just recognize that this is part of a dialogue. That's why we want to have both Mike Giansanti and you as well in this discussion. But ultimately, we're going to hopefully bringing everyone together and getting to a better place for all of us. So I so appreciate this perspective you guys bring to the table. Friend Annie from Comcast and Andrew from Tekniam, you guys have been great partners with us, and look forward to working with you going forward as we address the broadband and internet service needs for our community. So thank you guys for being on Chamber Chat, and we'll see you next time on Chamber Chat.